Hello, welcome to Working with Sky. My name is Ed Coulthard. I run Blast Films, and we recently made a series called Liverpool Narcos, which got launched on Sky Docs last week. I think it's fair to say that Sky Documentaries is one of the most exciting new documentary platforms in time, and it's just recently celebrated its first year anniversary, so a very good time to be talking to the people behind it. And it's obviously alongside its sister platform Sky Crime, Sky Nature and Sky History. Recent successes for Sky Documentary include Bruno vs. Tyson, which is the channel's most watched original sports documentary, and Framing Britney Spears, which is still the most watched documentary on the channel. And there's also a brilliant podcast performing on the channel to date. So before I introduce the team, I just want to say do send in any questions, and I'll put them to everybody before the end of the session. So to introduce the team, Poppy Dixon is the Director of Documentaries and Factual. Hayley Reynolds joined Sky from the BBC in February as commissioning editor, and joining Poppy and Hayley is Jamie Morris, who's Director of Programmes for UK and Ireland, and he's the person who spearheaded the launch of all of these factual channels. So before we hear from them, here's a taster showing some of the films that are currently available on the channel, and just some of the upcoming titles. So Jamie, you helped dream up all these new factual channels, and I just wondered if you could kick us off just with a sense of what you wanted to achieve and how you feel it's been going.
Yeah, so we're delighted with the progress. You've mentioned a few of the hits, Ed. So great that we've got hits on screen. We started to conceive Sky Documentaries and our factual offering in 2019. I think we're having real success on screen with our other commissioning genres like drama, comedy, entertainment, kids. And I think that success kind of allowed us to ask what's next. And we're a data-driven company, Sky, so we naturally asked the Sky customer, what other programs do you think should be available on Sky? And factual came out incredibly strongly, and in particular documentaries. So we started thinking, how can this manifest on a Sky service? And we wanted to really house documentaries in their own home. So very quickly came to, we should launch Sky Documentaries as a service. A very easy shorthand in was we wanted it to be the Sky Atlantic of non-scripted, world-class storytelling, combining the best of the US with Sky Originals. I think the difference with Sky Atlantic is we had a few years to get to Sky Originals, which matched, the US content, whereas with Sky Documentaries, we wanted to do it at scale very quickly. So we wanted to work with British filmmakers, looking at global stories, diverse stories, but really bringing that British storytelling mentality, to their films. And we've been able to achieve that, which is great. You've mentioned some, Bruno versus Tyson. We've had Exterminate All the Brutes, TINA. And I think what's really pleasing for us with the launch of Sky Documentaries is we have two real key measurements for us, which is volume and value. So we're always asking our customers, how many are watching and what do they think when they watch? And we look at volume and value, both at channel level and at program level. So from a channel point of view, Sky Documentaries is really rating incredibly well at value. Customers really get it. I think the brand came alive right at launch May last year. I think people got the story behind the story. I think the time was right for a documentaries platform that really offered, powerful stories, but also entertaining stories. So straight away we landed with value. And I think with volume for the channel, we've got 300 titles on the service now. So we've got that regular, appetite for viewers who are coming to the service to check it out. So I think very happy at a channel level in terms of volume and value, but also at program level, we do the same. And I think, what's really been pleasing is having hits. I think, it's great when you have a service which is getting regularly viewed, but you always want those standout hits. And I think that's what's also been really pleasing. I think Bruno versus Tyson, TINA in terms of Sky Originals. Now your show, Liverpool Narcos, has been a real success these past 7 days, which we're delighted with. But also the best of the US. We've had McMillions. I think you mentioned Framing Britney Spears doing over 2 million. I think a year ago, we didn't really conceive those kind of audiences to narrative documentaries. So we're delighted. And I think, we're in a good stage now to go, what's next? And I think that's what's really key. And I think The only thing I really want more of is Sky Originals. I think the one sticking point over the last year has been, the impact of COVID on production. But I think, the documentary filmmaking community has really responded well. And I think whilst there's a slight delay, I think if you asked me if I was sat here a year ago, I'd want more originals than we had. But the great news is that means we've got a lot more originals in the next 6 months, which we can talk to you about today. But yeah, overall delighted. And I think, it's a great starting point to go further.
And so, Poppy, do you want to talk about how you've been sort of planning, the actual content strategy for Sky Docs?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's, as Jamie says, it's been a really great time to launch a documentaries channel. I mean, I think, the stats have borne out, not just for us, but across the board, that people are watching more factual, more documentaries than ever before, and really engaging with narrative-driven docs, which is exactly what we're doing. And so the goal for the channel has been, and I think is bearing out, to be a destination for premium narrative-driven feature docs and limited series. And that's for our customers, obviously, but also for filmmakers, and that's what appealed to me as a former producer, that this platform was going to be available for people to bring, their storytelling, their very best storytelling craft. And with a theatrical sensibility. I mean, that's what we're looking for. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every project will have a cinema release. Some may not. But what we mean by that is, would you pay to go and see it? I mean, our customers are paying. And so we have to think about, does this project give them value? Would they tell their friends to go and buy a ticket? So we sort of think about that in terms of theatrical sensibility. And then, I think the other thing to say is, in terms of volume, we're looking for around 12 original series and 12 original feature docs a year. So we're hoping to sort of land something new every month that we'll really get behind. That's alongside our acquisitions, which we're still bringing in. We'll continue to get great content from HBO, our partners over there. So we've already had some really strong content from them, including the Tiger Woods documentary, The Vow, and there's a steady stream of that. And I think, probably the last thing to say, just sort of as part of an overview of Sky Docs, is sort of a little bit about what we're not looking for, because we're not actually we're not a broad factual channel. We're very much a documentaries channel, and within that, it's narrative driven. Like you'll hear us say that a lot. And we're very much driven by story. So we're not looking for hosted or presenter led. We're not looking for current affairs, science, anything too kind of constructed or formatted. It really needs to have that strong, propulsive story to drive you through. And we have decent budgets to play with, so we can fully fund working with Sky Studios. We can co-pro, pre-buy. So I would just say bring us your very best stories, and we'll see what we can do.
And so far, the kind of programs that have been working for you that you've commissioned that kind of have delivered on that, and that are actually already up on the platform, what would they be?
Well, there aren't a huge number of originals that have gone out yet, but the ones that have done brilliantly. So we talked about TINA and Bruno versus Tyson. Another one would be your series, Liverpool Narcos, which launched last week and is a brilliant example of a director-driven. It was helmed by the brilliant Anthony Phillipson, and it's a sort of beautifully crafted, really fresh series. It feels very different to anything I'd seen before, full of insights, but it manages to sort of blend humor and a lightness of touch with real kind of nuance and a depth of emotion. So I think that's a really strong example, actually.
Okay, well, maybe that's
a clip of Liverpool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of went out dropped. All three programs dropped on the platform last Thursday. Are you able to say anything about how that's gone? The response seems to be pretty positive, but I guess one question I've always thought people are interested in is about how you guys evaluate success and what that means, because we're not in a world of overnight ratings very much.
We're not
anyone, you guys.
Yeah, we're not. We don't measure by the overnights, and yet that series had the highest overnights for us of any Sky original so far. So we're thrilled with that. We generally measure on 28-day cumulative numbers, so we'll be keeping track on that for Liverpool Narcos. And as Jamie says, what we really also value. The audience value, our customers are telling us that they value Sky Documentaries as a channel. So that's something that we keep an eye on as well.
And I guess where we're different from other broadcasters, is just that we track every single day. So at 9:35, I look at how many people watch Liverpool Narcos, not just on one day with the overnights, but via 28 days. And it's growing by day, which is really pleasing.
So just moving on, you've obviously got lots of new programs that are coming out, and there's some new titles that you want to announce, Poppy. I wondered if you could talk about that.
Absolutely, yeah. We're really excited today to be announcing some new additions to our slate, and I think that they reflect the sort of breadth of stories that we're looking for. So first up, we've got Mother Teresa, For the Love of God, which is a 3-part series from Minnow Films. It explores the sort of truth about this icon that we think we know, and somebody who's been presented to us in a very particular light, and uncovers some of the sort of lesser known surprising truths about her life and work. So whilst it celebrates the incredible work she did, it also questions some of the methods and reveals some allegations that have been made against her. So we're really excited about that coming up. Next up, we have a feature doc called The Scream, which was going to be directed by Jenny Ash and exec produced by Asif Kapadia. And this is a really brilliant story of the theft of one of the most famous paintings in the world, Edvard Munch's The Scream. And at one level, this is a great cat and mouse chase. It has hallmarks of a classic heist story, but it's also a sort of rich tale of intense obsession, kind of painful obsession, which is quite fitting for a painting which is all about trauma. So I think Jenny's going to have a lot of fun making that film. And then next we have another feature doc from Raw, which is being directed by Georgina Camilleri and exec by Tim Wardle. And this is the story of a small group of women in 1970s New York who managed to forge a path in the very misogynistic world of boxing. They were fighting for the right, for a license to be able to fight legally. And they succeeded in that, but came up against all sorts of other issues with racism, homophobia, domestic violence. And it's a really rich story. They've got great archive, great access, and I'm excited to see what Georgina does with it. And Hayley's going to talk through a couple of the other new projects.
Yeah, next up we've got The Three Lives of Michael X. It's a feature doc directed by James Vanderpool, produced by BBC Studios, and it's a really intimate portrait of the founder of the Black Power movement in the UK. In the 1960s, Michael was at the forefront of fighting for the rights of the Black community, this real defining moment in the UK's history, and as such became known as the UK's answer to Malcolm X. He amassed this enormous following. It included lots of powerful celebrities like John Lennon and Muhammad Ali, but he ended up becoming this really divisive historical figure. In the end, he had to flee the UK. He moved to Trinidad and was tried, convicted, and eventually executed for murder. It's a really rich, complex, nuanced rise and fall story. And despite his high profile at the time, very few people know his story. And then last but not least is Queen of Speed, which tells the story of Michelle Mouton, who was the most successful woman in the history of motorsports. So she was the first and only woman to ever win a World Rally Championship. And over 3 decades later, she's still the last woman to have competed at that level of rallying. And she started out in the 70s and 80s at a time when the sport was absolutely at its most dangerous, but also aggressively macho. So she came up against real hostility, a lot of chauvinism. And it's a film about her fearless determination and resilience and how she became adored by this enormous group of fans and the media. And up until now, her story's never been told. And that's going to be directed by Barbie McLaurin, and it's produced by Drum Studios.
And you've got a Ghislaine Maxwell series coming up as well. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's launching on the 28th of June, so very soon. And it's a three-part series. It's a co-pro with Peacock, and it unravels that question of, you know, who is Ghislaine Maxwell? Where did she come from? How did she get involved with Epstein? You know, what was her role in this behavior that we now know Epstein was involved in? So, you know, it's about power, sex, money, and the abuse of all of these things. And, you know, she's remained a real mystery till now. And I think people are desperate to know more about her. So I think we're going to show a trailer for that series as well.
And do you want to talk a little bit about how that project came about, Poppy?
Yeah, I mean, it was pitched to us, our colleague Jack Oliver, who looks after many of our pre-buys and some co-pros, and he was approached, I believe, by Blue Ant Media, who are the producers in America who made the series. They were already on board, and we came on board to co-pro it with them.
Because there's different ways that you guys work a bit, isn't there? Because sometimes there's the originals are sort of fully funded, and there's I mean, there's a kind of mix of kind of funding sort of options in the way in which you commission.
Yeah, I mean, we like to come on board early, and you know, we have money to do development as well, which is great because it means we can, you know, really test out an idea and really explore access and the approach with producers and directors. And we can fully finance. That would usually mean working with Sky Studios, who would take distribution. We can also co-pro with, you know, one or multiple parties. I mean, certainly on the nature side, usually you end up with multiple parties. And then we can also, you know, acquire. So we can come on board at a late stage or even at rough gut stage if that's when somebody approaches us. So yeah, we're kind of open for business all year round and at any stage really.
So, and Jamie, do you want to just give us a sense of how it works on the other Sky channels? So, and also, I know obviously there's some new commissions coming up on kind of Sky Crime and so on.
Yeah, obviously we launched Sky Documentaries in May. It launched alongside Sky History and also Sky Nature. And previous to that, we launched Sky Crime. So we really wanted very clear customer propositions. And I know, you know, filmmakers will work across multiple genres, but we really wanted to make sure that, you know, we know there's a real audience who love true crime. So we wanted to establish a very clear brand for that kind of content, which is Sky Crime. Similarly, Sky Nature, similarly Sky Documentaries and Sky History, which are still run by A&E. But we also co-commission with them, and that's by Poppy and Dan Corn. In terms of Sky Crime, I think, you know, it's the home of true crime, and we've got a very exciting series coming up called Bamba's Murder at the Farm. This series is from Mindhouse Productions, so Louis Theroux and Aaron Fellows are exec producing it. It tells the real story of what happened at White House Farm from a factual storytelling point of view. It's really creatively ambitious. We've had a sneak peek of a rough cut of episode 1, and it is unbelievably strong. We have a scheduler on Sky Crime, Emily, who she wanted to devour the whole series there and then. So that's coming up later this year. In terms of Sky Nature, it's been a bit slower in terms of originals because natural history takes a very long time to make, but we're very excited. We've already announced it, but we've got Shark with Steve Backshall later this year. This is a 3-part blue chip high-end nature series. It's driven by the passion of Steve, really. When he came in to speak to us about it with Wendy Dart from True to Nature, we were overwhelmed with his passion for the species. And he really wanted to reposition our understanding of sharks and take the viewer on a journey. And that's been in production for 18 months plus and will arrive on screens later this year. So we are very much active in commissioning on Sky Nature and Sky Crime. For Sky Crime in particular, I think we really want high-end series. I think, you know, our North Star is to kind of do a British, you know, brilliant true crime premium series. And, you know, hopefully the Bambas will be exactly that. I think it has every chance to be. So I think very clear channel propositions is the key, very clear customer promises. And then in terms of Sky Documentaries, I think other things we're really looking forward to and excited about. We've already announced Chernobyl 86 from Top Hat Productions. Chernobyl was a huge success for us in terms of drama, and we didn't necessarily want to revisit it as a factual piece. But, you know, when it was pitched to us with new archive, new testaments from witnesses, it was such a compelling pitch. And that's going to be produced and directed by James Jones. And we're really excited about that one. We also have Positive. This is from Arrow Pictures. It's a 3-part examination of the AIDS crisis in the UK, and that's also later this year. So again, creatively ambitious, socially important. And I think another one just to call out is we've also got Hawking, Can You Hear Me? This is from Atlantic Productions. It's a feature-length documentary about Stephen Hawking, but told through his family and told through never seen before archive. And again, that's later this year and something we're very excited about. So hopefully we've got exciting projects across all of our services is the key.
So I think it's probably time just to cut to what I guess most people watching this would be really interested in, which is the kind of ideas that you're looking forward to or you're looking for going forward. So I wondered, Hayley or Poppy, if you want to just talk about, you know, what your immediate needs are and how people should be approaching you.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to talk about Sky Documentaries specifically, a little bit of Sky Crime, but for that channel, we're commissioning around 4 specific pillars: sports and cultural icons, crime and scandal, news adjacent and contemporary history, and stranger than fiction. They're not mutually exclusive and can be a blend of one another. So I'll just talk you through in a little bit more detail around the areas for each one. So sport and cultural icons, you know, we've had TINA, Bruno v Tyson, Framing Britney, which have been huge successes. And, you know, we're looking for those ultimate biographies, broad and appeal, populist, but with a real intimate and forensic approach that really take you beyond the sport, beyond the music. It's really important that they feel accessible to non-super fans. Ideally, we're looking for a unique perspective or a fresh perspective, and we want films that absolutely feel celebratory, but also challenging, not just hagiographies. Moving on to crime and scandal. You know, this is really about those jaw-dropping mysteries that take the audience on a journey to the truth. Just a quick note on crime here, because there's opportunity on Sky Crime and Sky Docs. So crime on Sky Docs, we're looking for those crime caper stories, those heists, cult stories, white collar crimes that involve drugs or fraud or theft. Some good examples would be McMillions that we had last year, Liverpool Narcos, which we've heard about today, and something like The Vow, which came from HBO. And then those murder stories or violent crimes against ordinary people would commission into Sky Crime. So those infamous criminals and crimes that have gripped the nation but haven't had that forensic retelling or haven't been revisited from a new perspective. So Bambas, which Jamie just mentioned a minute ago, is a really good example. Then we've got news adjacent / contemporary history. And for this, we're really looking for those definitive takes on contemporary history or major events. And at their core, they should have real topicality. They need to resonate, especially with the UK audience, and really hold a mirror up to society. But the approach shouldn't feel current affairs. So a good example would be The Return, Life After ISIS, which premiered on Sunday night here at Sheffield and is going to TX for us next Tuesday, which is about Shamima Begum and lots of other foreign women that have ended up in these refugees camps in Syria. And then we've also got Positive, which is a 3-part series that will mark Britain's 40-year battle with AIDS. Some other good references would be things like Force Armour or the Murdoch Dynasty from some of our other colleagues. And then finally, Stranger Than Fiction, which I think it's fair to say we'd like all of our docs across the channel to have that sort of that feel around them. But this is really about those extraordinary individuals, intimate stories with a real first quality to them with universal relevance. think the challenge in this area is finding those smaller untold stories that still feel like they've got enough scale and resonate in the UK. So the volume around this area will probably be less than the others, but still some really great opportunity there. So some good examples would be things like Three Identical Strangers, Mystery of DB Cooper. And I think in that area, you know, we're developing some really interesting films with new and diverse filmmakers who have just come to us with extraordinary access or extraordinary stories. So that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of those 4 areas, and hopefully, you know, it feels like there's real diversity of subject and scope in the approach. And I think hopefully, no matter which indie you are, that there's some sort of opportunity in there for everyone.
What do you think
sorry,
Go ahead.
Ed. I was just going to add to that. I mean, we are commissioning into all of those pillars, and there's opportunity for 22 and beyond in all of them. But I thought I might specify a few like very specific needs that we have for 22 right now. And one of them is a sports series. Actually, we, you know, when I joined, we had quite a lot of sports already in the mix. But right now, we'd love something sort of perhaps football based ahead of the World Cup, but it could be another sport, could be past tense. It could also be something observational and a bit more in the now. The key is that it has a broad appeal beyond something that would just, you know, speak to the fans of that particular sport. And then another area that we're actually keen to commission in is Irish Ireland. You know, whether that's based there or involving Irish contributors. You know, we're keen to serve our customers over there a little bit more as well. Always looking for big name biographies, like Hayley said, and that's you know, that's always going to be about access, whether to the person or just to some kind of unique way in, you know, potentially archive. And as we've continued to say since we launched the channel, you know, we're always looking for stories and films that reflect the diversity of Britain. You know, including featuring individuals with disabilities. I think we're not quite reflecting enough in that area yet, and so we're also looking for those stories. They don't have to be about the disability, but just, you know, featuring a more diverse range of contributors.
So yeah, just reminding anyone, if they've got any particular questions, do please send them through, and we will have time to ask them. But just for now, I mean, Poppy and Hayley, I mean, what's the best way to pitch to you guys? How do you like to receive new ideas?
Well, the best way to email us your proposals is to send everything to. This sounds very impersonal, but this generic email, skyfactual@sky.uk, doesn't go into a black hole. It goes into both of ours and our colleague Janine's inboxes directly, and it just means that we all have, when people send us treatments and trailers, we all have access to it rather than having to keep forwarding and emails to each other. So yeah, send us. It's absolutely fine to send if you haven't got a full treatment and trailer. Fine to send us top lines, one pages, just to gauge interest. I think from our point of view, there's a few simple do's and don'ts. The first is, as Poppy said, we use the term all the time, narrative driven, but those are the ideas we're looking for. So, you know, try and pitch us the story that's going and the characters that are going to take you into that particular issue or subject rather than just a general area. And then, as well as pitching us the story, I think, which we're quite likely to have been sent several times that week, we're really keen to sort of find out what your approach is. You know, and why you think it's right for Sky Docs, and always useful to include some references, and if you're thinking of any particular directors as well. And then, you know, we try and acknowledge all proposals within a couple of days. I mean, up until Janine and I joined a couple of months ago, Poppy was flying solo and managing this process for all 3 channels. So I hope now we've got into a really good rhythm, and we'll get back to people as soon as we can. And I think the other good thing to know for producers is that, you know, it feels, for me, having joined, like we're a really tight, nimble little team, and essentially it's it's us on this call, Jamie and Zai, and so it doesn't feel like there's layers and layers and layers of decision making to get through. So yeah, email us skyfactual@sky.uk.
I mean, you mentioned directors. I mean, how important is authorship or name director talent? I mean, is that something you expect producers to bring to the table at the kind of pitch stage, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, we are very much driven by the creative vision of a project. Like Hayley said, we don't just want to be told the story, we want to be told how you're going to tell it. So absolutely, the choice of director is key. But it's great if you can pitch a project with a director attached, but if you don't have one, that's totally fine. Maybe just throw some names in of the types of people you think would be great for it. And then we can work together to attach the right person. But yeah, we're really, and they don't need to, I mean, we love working with big name directors. That's great. We'll continue to do that. But we're also really encouraging of emerging talent, and we're all keeping an eye out for those exciting names. And we've already commissioned projects from first time or sort of early career directors. So there's absolutely opportunity there.
And what about how much are you looking for American, just British-based stories, or how much is it American? How much is it international? I mean, how does that work?
I think for us, we're really looking for those originals to be UK facing, I think is the term we keep using. And I think, what that means is stories that really resonate and mean something to our UK customers and elsewhere in Europe. But that could be a narrative thread or a character in the UK, but it doesn't always have to have that sort of direct link. It could just have a real sort of sense of universal relevance. I mean, I think this is maybe a really obvious example, but something like American Murder, it's a film about a family. Something like Welcome to Chechnya, which is a film we did at Storyville. It's about a persecuted group in Chechnya, but really it's about a film about love. I think that there's lots of scope there in terms of international projects, but just making sure that we're always thinking about the UK audience. I think the other thing is a sort of a British sensibility. So in terms of storytelling. So, there's some American projects that come our way that feel very, very American in approach, and those aren't quite right for us. I think the other thing to say in that area is that, Poppy mentioned earlier on about co-productions, and sometimes it does feel like, we will go back to people and say, look, we don't think this is one that we would fully commission or fully finance. But let's talk about whether there are any co-product, or can you go and find any other co-production partners, and we can come in sort of at a pre-buy instead. So there's lots of scope there.
And what about the kind of shape and the length? I mean, obviously you make feature docs, you're pushing feature docs. We've just made a 3-part series for you. I mean, what's kind of the ideal shape? And I guess there's a secondary question, which is that one of the things that I think when I think about Netflix is about how programs work as a kind of serial. How much you want people to sit and kind of binge watch a whole series all in one go. I mean, maybe Jamie would know a bit more about that. But what's the sort of what different types of programs do you most want in terms of the actual form?
I can take this, and Jamie, you can pick up if you want to expand. So for Sky Docs, we're looking for feature-length docs, which would mean, probably at least 80 minutes. I'm not a big fan of films over 100 minutes. I think that in a doc that feels very long. So, let's say roughly 90 minutes. And then in terms of series, we are looking for box set series. We do want our viewers to watch one and then the next and then the next. So we're looking for those hooks at the end of the episode to bring you back. My personal sweet spot is sort of 3 to 4 episodes. I think that's a really good number. I think it can be quite hard to keep people much longer than that. We would look at a 5 or 6 part series if it really needed it. I think we're unlikely to do the sort of The Last Dance type length of series, but never say never, but it's not something we're looking at the moment.
And what about you, Jamie, in terms of how how people. I was just interested in like how you want people to watch. I mean, we're doing a series for Netflix at the moment, and they seem to be, obsessed with the fact that they want people to consume, a whole series sort of in one go, if possible, sort of thing. And is that something that's helping to drive your commissioning decisions?
I think we know that audiences love watching television that way. And I think I love watching television that way. And, what the audience research tells us is the same thing. So we were delighted, we wanted to release McMillions all in one go. We thought it was again, a series you would rush through. Liverpool Narcos the same. So it's going to be our intention to release all series in full. And, and I think from a customer point of view, I think, narrative driven, yes. I think ideally, a narrative hook that takes you from one to the other, but equally just very good quality, so the audience wants to go through it. And I think what I love about Sky Documentaries is the way audiences watch the channel. 60% of the viewing comes from either on demand or playback. So I think, because we're talking about premium narrative-driven pieces, people are watching, on demand in their own moment, watching it from beginning to end, and consuming it that way. And I think we really need to lean into that with our release.
And Jamie, one of the things that obviously we all think about at the moment is just how quickly everything is changing and how quickly viewing habits are changing. And in a way, I guess, the kind of landscape is a little bit different, perhaps even from when you launched Sky Documentaries. I mean, I'd just be really interested to sort of get your sense of how you think the kind of sort of viewerscape has evolved over the 12 months, and kind of whether or not your views on the channel are actually changing and evolving as you go forward.
Well, I think when we conceived Sky Documentaries, we always wanted it to be on demand first. It made sense to have a linear channel, because a living channel to a lot of people is, something, living and breathing. So that makes sense. But we always knew that everything you can see on the linear channel is available in full on demand. So whereas a linear channel, you might see Liverpool Narcos one episode, episodes 1, 2, and 3 will be on demand. So we very much want people to discover Sky Documentaries in whichever way they want. So, linear provides a great place to find new viewers via the EPG, but we know that, the key experience is on demand. And, once you start watching Liverpool Narcos, we don't want to then say you'll have to wait another week to watch the next episode. We want to say we'll bring you the next episode immediately after. And that's why we release the way we do. I think the key things I'm learning is, just what an appetite there is for Sky Documentaries. I think if someone had asked us a year ago, you'll get a 2 million audience for a documentary, we wouldn't have believed it. And I think, because we hadn't seen those kind of factual audiences behind a paywall, but, 2 million, I think, is the highest rating factual program for Britney Spears over the last 20 years. And it's just really gratifying. And I think the key there is, timely releases as well. I think, once upon a time you could have got away with, we acquired Britney Spears, hold on to it, release it in the right way for the schedule. And that wasn't the case. We knew that there was a buzz going on straight away. So we had to get the feature out immediately to Sky customers who wanted it there and then. So I think the main thing is making great stories, and getting them to customers in the easiest possible way. And I think do that, and the audience tend to find us.
I think the other thing to add there is that we have a great library now of some of the best feature docs and series. I mean, mainly feature docs actually in the library, but also some series, that have been made over the last sort of 20 years. So, and I think that that's a real treat for our customers as well, that they can go and dip into and find, lots of award-winning films by some of the best filmmakers. And we are continuing to acquire. We won't be acquiring dozens and dozens of projects a year, but we'll be keeping our eyes out, attending festivals, talking to filmmakers. The acquisitions team will be really looking for those, really buzzy projects to bring to the channel as well.
And I think awareness is key as well, because I think, sorry, just to pick up final point, Poppy's already mentioned it, but I think, where we really want to go forward from now is a regular cadence of both originals and, the best of the US documentaries. So I think what Poppy said before about, every month we want one original feature, one original series, side by side with that, an acquired original and acquired series. So the audiences always know that there is something on Sky Documentaries new. Behind that, a really extensive library. And I think, awareness is also key. And I think what I'm most proud of really in the last year is also the way Sky's got behind Documentaries and Factual. We launched United Way a few weeks ago, and it was all over Sky Sports social feeds. And I think what we're seeing is, we have the UI on Sky Q, and Liverpool Narcos over the last 7 days will have been really prevalent on the UI. So I think getting audiences to content by our specific means is what's really key, and I think that's what we can really bring these films.
So I've got a nitty-gritty question for you, Poppy, from Lorraine McKenzie, which is, could you talk about your tariffs for features and for limited series?
Well, we don't work to tariffs, which is not a very helpful answer, I'm afraid. But what I can say is we have a really decent budget for Factual, and we can move it around the 3 channels if we need to. But I would say that bring us your ideas. We can talk to you about your ambition, and then we can work out whether it's something that we can fully fund, or whether we can sort of help find co-pro partners or other ways to fund it. But there is decent money there, and we want to be able to help people fulfill their ambition and to create, premium. When we talk about premium documentaries, which everyone talks about at the moment, we're not, that doesn't just mean having a great budget, but it is about production values, about really strong storytelling, about having decent time in the edit. It may be about a title sequence, or really strong bespoke score. These are all the things that feel premium and that will draw in those audiences who might traditionally have watched more drama and comedy. So yeah, I think it's sort of bespoke on a case by case budget in terms of numbers.
So I've got a question here, which is for Jamie, which is about Sky History, which we haven't talked about very much, and what Sky History might be looking for.
I think it's worth saying that, as I mentioned before, Sky History still run by A&E. I think a large part of their commissioning is Dan Corn and Heather Jones. I think we do co-produce with Sky History, and that's where we come into it. And I think where we're looking for is exactly what Poppy's been saying, right throughout this, premium, a very theatrical sensibility, and those pieces that we can really get behind the Sky as a business. Poppy, you're closer to the process.
Yeah, I think the thing to say is we don't look after Sky History day to day, so the best person to talk to about specific. So that's where I'd direct you to.
And what about Sky Nature, Jamie? Is that something that you're looking to get more pitches and proposals on?
Well, I think Poppy will tell you we get a lot, which is great. I think that the second the channels were announced, I think we were flooded with nature and documentaries and crime proposals, which is exactly what we wanted to see, because I think the reaction to all the Factual services has been incredible. I think in terms of pitches, and I'll let Poppy go on to more, we are looking for blue chip, truly event level programming is probably our real ambition. I think Shark with Steve Baxall is exactly that, and we want more of that. We want moments throughout the year. I'd say 3 or 4 big moments where we can really get behind a natural history piece in the kind of very big Sky way, and really prioritize. We obviously on Sky Nature have our agreement with Love Nature, so that kind of keeps the channel going day to day. I think they've got some incredible content, and again, a lot of that content has been watched by viewers for the last year before we've even got Sky Originals on screen at scale. But I think the main thing is very much blue chip premium series. I think kind of length parts is what Poppy was talking to before, ideally 3 or 4, maximum 6. But I think Poppy's already mentioned it. We do co-produce sometimes with a number of parties on Nature as well, so we won't always be the lead, and that really opens us up for more ideas and to really come in and be a kind of collaborative partner on them.
I think so just to add on the Nature front, as Jamie said, we're not commissioning a huge number of originals for Nature, so 3 or 4 a year. So I think we're fully stocked up for 22, 23, and we're commissioning into 24 now for Nature. That's the sort of lead time that a lot of these projects need anyway. But it's they need to feel kind of landmark, blue chip, natural history, really escapist, taking our audience somewhere new. And there will be some presenter led, but there'll also be your kind of classic non-presenter, so more kind of landmark feel, natural history as well that we're looking for.
And we're really after celebration of the natural world.
Yeah, and we are. I mean, obviously, climate change, conservation, huge issues. Sky, as an organisation, is very, very behind all of those issues. We have the Sky Zero initiative, but I think with the natural history content, we really want that kind of messaging to be embedded within the series rather than the headline about the series. I don't think anybody wants to sort of have that kind of messaging sort of hammered into them. I think it's really great when you're kind of encouraged to love and respect and care for the natural world, and that the idea that we need to protect it it sort of comes through that rather than is the this driving force of the series.
And Hayley, I mean, this is just, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I mean, my experience of making Liverpool Narcos is just about how encouraged, we've been as program makers to take risks and do things differently and kind of, not follow traditional factual programming formats or whatever. And I just wondered about sort of when you're looking at an idea, how much the way it's being, it's not just the story, but the way it's being made, how important that is, and how much you're sort of really putting a premium on innovation.
Yeah, I mean, it's vital. And I think, this is the conversation we have in our weekly development meetings, week in, week out, isn't it, Poppy? We get sent, really great ideas all the time, brilliant stories. As I said earlier, sometimes several times in 1 week. And I think, what we're looking for is who's making it and what the creative approach is. And I think something like Liverpool Narcos is a really good example of Sky taking those risks. And, it's about balance, isn't it? We've got, across the slate, we've got some that feel like, they're absolutely going to deliver, and we can punctuate that with taking some risks with people we really trust and respect, and that have a great track record of innovating and trying something new, and really being able to elevate those stories into something completely different, something that feels like it's really pushing the documentary form. I think one thing that we've just seen more and more of recently is obviously we're still trying to find a decent phrase for this: drama recon, recreations, factual drama. They all sound pretty rubbish, but I think that's something that we've been looking at a lot across the slate over the last year, and is really sort of paying dividends at the moment. So I think we're always on the lookout, and it is about taking risks. Otherwise, obviously, the form just won't move forward.
And it's not just risks in. Sorry, Ed, I keep interrupting.
No.
I was just going to add, it's not just risks in form and style, which we're really up for, but also, we're not afraid of controversial subjects. So Mother Teresa, it's going to be a challenging film about Mother Teresa, a series, and The Return, Life After ISIS, it tracks a handful of women who chose to go and join ISIS and are now stuck in limbo. And, these kind of projects will they'll court criticism as much as I hope they'll court praise, and what we really want is conversation and for people to talk about them. So I think there's room for that kind of risk as well.
Because like everyone else, you're trying to hit on projects which are going to have a big impact and kind of reach out and get a lot of publicity. The one question which isn't immediately clear is just about the difference between Sky Crime and Sky Docs. I guess that my question is really also about how, whether sort of the budgets are the same on Sky Crime, whether the demand for innovation is the same, and kind of, how you actually sort of evaluate a project that can go on one of those platforms or the other.
I can take that. There's so Sky Crime, we actually look for two different types of content. So the channel is really set out on the one hand to appeal to that real kind of true crime audience who devour everything they can get their hands on about violent crime. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. These are mainly murder stories. And so we look for what we call adjudicated series, which run on weeknights. They're returnable, they're generally longer running, and they're closed-ended episodes. And these are generally more cost-effective, and sometimes they are familiar stories sort of fitting in a bracket. So Killer in My Village, World's Most Evil Killers, lots of examples of those. And we acquire a lot of content from Oxygen in the US as well for Sky Crime on that front. And then we also commission, as Hayley and Jamie were talking about earlier, what we would call the sort of the premium tentpole crime pieces. And for this, we're looking for roughly 6 a year. They'll mainly be limited series. And again, it's that box set. We want one great gripping story that's twisty and turny and takes you in all sorts of different directions. We'll do the odd feature doc. We've got one in production, actually, a co-pro with Hulu. So the sort of American Murder style, crime single. But we're more likely to go for series. The tariffs, again, we don't really use the word tariff because we don't really work to them. But the money for a premium crime series is really not that different than we can spend on a premium doc series. The adjudicated weeknight series, they're much lower tariff, and usually a producer will sort of supplement the funding with distribution or co-production. So that's I don't know if I've missed anything, Hayley or Jamie.
I think the main thing would be editorial. Maybe is just that I think. I'm a huge fan of true crime. I think, some of the best programs made over the last few years have been true crime. And for me, Sky Crime means either the murder next door or the murderer next door. It's not exclusively murders, but it tends to be a fair few. And I think with other crime, so corporate crime, white-collar crime, caper crime, like McMillions, drug crime, Liverpool Narcos, I think all of that is Sky Documentaries. So for me, it is quite a clear delineation.
So we're kind of getting, that's good. No, but we're getting slightly towards the end. But I mean, Jamie, I just wondered whether you got sort of just sort of looking forward through all this kind of rapidly changing streamer world, just kind of how you're sort of seeing that the Sky Documentaries in particular will evolve. And, I guess we're hoping that the appetite for documentaries is just going to get stronger.
I think so. I think, as I said, I think one of the most pleasing things about launching our factual services has been the reaction of both the audience, but also the filmmaking community. I think, the fact that, people who specialize in documentaries kind of want to make narrative-led stories, want to make ambitious stories, want to make talked about stories, socially important, but creatively ambitious is key to our success. So I think that's really important, but also there is a huge audience appetite. And I think, it was, for me, I don't think it's just been in the last 12 months. I think, audience behaviors have changed with COVID and, time spent in front of a television set in a good way, which I think, has allowed people to explore and discover even more content. But I think, there was an audience there before. And I think it's great that we've been able to enter the space. We're not the only ones making great documentaries, but hopefully we're competitive. And I think how it's going to evolve in the future, hopefully, as I said, we can do even more. And I think, when we launched these services, we always said, the first few years will be testing the landscape, seeing the audience appetite. We've really discovered it's there. So I think, we really want to get to the point where we are giving Sky customers 2 originals a month, a series and a film. And I think once we get to that point, evaluate again of the audience need. But we know at the moment we're not quite matching it because I think, people love these stories, number one. And, and it's a breadth of stories. I think, when you think about sport, the United Way, our co-production with HBO, Exterminate All the Brutes, these are really diverse stories, and we're getting different audiences for different films and different series, but, they're all coming together under the Sky Documentaries umbrella, and it's just really pleasing. And, with Poppy and Hayley and Janine, it's only going to go forwards.
Yeah, and Poppy, sort of, in terms of just looking forward, I mean, I guess we're very lucky to have fantastic filmmaking talent in this country, especially.
We are, and sort of new names emerge all the time, and it's really exciting to keep track of that. I mean, I think it is fair to say that we are currently predominantly working with UK-based filmmakers and production companies. We're certainly open to looking at projects from elsewhere and talent from elsewhere as well. But I think we just hope that people will see Sky Documentaries as a place to to bring their ideas, and somewhere that will champion the very best storytelling, wherever it comes from.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jamie. Thanks, Poppy. Thanks, Hayley. Lots of amazing new programs and films coming out, and hopefully everybody's got a much clearer sense of how to work with you going forward. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.